We have people reaching out from all over the country that want to share their story.
I was your first guest on the podcast. And I remember you dropped me off in New York and then went to drive Uber because you were like, no, until we start making money, until ends meet, like I'm going to hustle and I'm going to do whatever I can.
Go try it. Like, I don't hate on other people. I want people to win.
But when you first started telling videos, you were getting flack for talking about prison. And now you're getting flack for not having prison people on there. How do you respond to the people that are criticizing you no matter what you do? Ian Bick, host of Locked In with Ian Bick, who's always on the interviewing side. How about we interview you?
Sounds great to me.
You got to this position. You're in this fancy podcast studio that I blew me away when I came here. But you got out of prison how long ago?
I got out January 2019. Was that 4 years ago? Coming up, I think it's 5 this year.
Okay. So like 4.5 years ago, you got out of prison. And did you ever imagine you'd be sitting in a podcast studio with bright lights, having just hung out with Chevy Chase and having investors? And was this ever part of the plan?
Well, I was so anti-investor when I got out of prison, PTSD from the past life. But, this opportunity came out where I needed to take on investors, but the right way this time. And no, I never thought I would get back into working for myself again because I fell in love with working for someone else. I enjoyed working for Whole Foods. I enjoyed having a guaranteed paycheck. I enjoyed putting in the work and getting rewarded for that. Whereas when I owned the nightclub, I'd put in the work and I didn't necessarily get the reward. I'd only kept digging a deeper hole. So to be able to, work at Whole Foods, put in the work, get paid for my time, and then build relationships, a car, an apartment, get a dog, support myself, do whatever, was great until I had that mentality of who I truly was of, I'm a natural born entrepreneur, natural born out of the box thinker, natural born someone that's meant to be different. That's not your typical average person. And that's what working in that corporate setting doesn't fuel you to do. It doesn't give you that ability to think and create. And that's when the thing I loved turned into something I started to hate. And that's when I knew I had to leave.
Because guys talk to me all the time. When we were locked up, everybody wanted to get out and start a business. Everybody wanted to be an entrepreneur. But just because you want to be an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean you're willing to do the work to start a business. So what was it? You say you're different, but what made it clear to you that you had the drive to do this? What let you know that you could accomplish this where other people never really take that first step?
I think I've always had the drive, at a young age, selling candy in high school, hustling lemonade stands, working for my dad's catering company. I always had a job. I worked for a party rental business, setting up tents. I worked in kitchens. I was the pizza guy. When I got out of prison, I was working for Whole Foods my schedule was 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. at Whole Foods. And then I would go to the pizzeria about 20 minutes down the road and work from, 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. I'd go home, shower, and I'd do it all again. And then sometimes I'd even incorporate the gym into that. And I was up at 4 a.m. And when I lost the job at the pizzeria, because when the pandemic happened, I started doing DoorDash. I was just always like, I have the work ethic that I think others don't. And I'm motivated by pain. When something bad happens to me, that fuels me. Like a breakup, a loss, anything, financial loss, that's like, here's some gasoline on that shit. Let me run with it. And I love that. That drives me to a whole new level. And I think that's where I stand out from a lot of individuals. So I think when I felt that pain and anger last year, when I was at Whole Foods, seeing other people get promoted when I should have been in that position, because in corporate, they reward laziness a lot of the times, and people that shouldn't be in those positions get into those positions. That angered me. And seeing I owned a club at a young age. I did all this cool stuff. And here I am not really doing anything. I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm just staying neutral. Never going to get my restitution paid off working a 9 to 5. So that just reinvigorated me to go out and do something. And I went down that whole rabbit hole of social media and stuff. My best friend was telling me, Matt, the other day, he's like, listen, I'll give you credit. When you say you're going to do something and put your mind to it, consider it done. Like I said, I'm going to build this podcast studio. This whole thing, we did it in a day. We did it one day. It was me and my new partner, Patrick, and we had a couple friends. My brother was helping me. Painted the place in a day. We put up all the everything. We just hustled and got it done, and that reminded me of the tuxedo days. I remember redoing the whole club in a weekend to get it ready to open. I didn't hire anyone to go do it. I was in it, and that's what makes it so much more rewarding and fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, and to give people an idea, I was your first guest on the podcast. And I remember you dropped me off in New York and then went to drive Uber because you were like, no, until we start making money, until ends meet, like I'm going to hustle and I'm going to do whatever I can. And that's so different than other people. And honestly, it's so different than me. Like I'm ready to relax and I don't. But in my mind, I'm like, I just want to get to the point where I can relax. And you're like, no, I want to get to the point where I can work harder, I can work smarter, I can work more. And that's just inspirational. So leaving Whole Foods, what let you know or what inspired you to start a podcast? Why did you think this was the direction?
I'd never had any plans to start a podcast. I always have been a person where you don't do what everyone else is doing. So I knew that the podcast market was oversaturated. I mean, you look at the stats now, 5 million, 6 million podcasts on, Spotify, Apple, whatever. And you Google, how do you make money on podcasting? And the first thing that comes up is don't quit your day job. It's like 1% of people, can turn this into a professional business. And to be in the top 2.5% of podcasts alone, I think you need like 1,000 downloads or something. I don't think anyone realizes how hard it is to get even like 10 listeners. On YouTube is different, TikTok's different, Facebook's different. We're talking about going on Spotify, going on Apple, and clicking on your show and listening to that from their phone. That's not the algorithm pushing it to you. That's marketing and whatever it's mixed with and getting them to do that. So I was very anti that because I just figured everyone had a podcast. And I go down this TikTok rabbit hole of telling stories that were working. I had some videos go viral. That's how you and I connected last year. I'm getting followers, but I wasn't making money. Anyone that knows TikTok back then, it's a little bit different now, but there was no money in that creator fund. So I was living off my credit card, just hoping to figure something out. And that's when I started driving Uber to help with the bills. But it was just trial and error, telling stories, telling videos. And then really I got the idea for the podcast by starting to meet individuals like you and the rest of the community, because I saw you guys are all on YouTube putting out videos. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is what they're doing. They're interviewing other people that have been to prison. They have hundreds of thousands of followers on their platform. How do I take this to a new level? Because in business, every good business model takes someone else's model and makes it better. Look at airlines, look at everything like that. So I did that with the prison TikTok community. I said, let's throw some professional production on this. Let's get the cameras. Let's get the studio. Let's get the professional photography. Let's fly them out. So that was my experience in the nightclub industry. Let's bring them, to our studio, give them that experience, shuttle them out there, and do an in-person interview, because this is a world where everyone's doing Zoom interviews. So how do I stand out? Well, you don't do Zoom interviews, and I will never do a Zoom interview. And I just jumped into that, and we shot the first podcast. I said, Jesse, will you come on? And I picked people for those first podcasts that already had platforms so they could help me boost mine. And in return, they would get the clips, because a lot of individuals were feeling burnout from telling their story over and over again. So you need to have a different perspective so it becomes mutually beneficial. And we were just doing that. And, from January to March, putting out one episode a week, learning the kinks. I think something that helped me in my success was that I had to adapt quickly. So you see in my interviews that my questioning got better, and that I grew over time, and that we changed things with the set and the lighting and the production and the sound. And if I stayed stagnant doing the same thing, which is what you can't really change on, say, like YouTube, doing it on a webcam, I was able to adjust and do those little changes. And then the defining point, a couple things happened. One, we started to go to 2 episodes a week, because now we have a specific niche that no one else is doing. And 2, how do you stand out from the other podcasts that are outside of our niche? And it's very hard to produce not only 1 podcast a week, but to produce 2 high quality, consistent podcasts. So we went to 2 episodes a week. The numbers start going up. Then a video of me saying I paid for protection in prison went viral on No Jumper and these other sites, and that helped. And then that's when everything clicked. Like, it's not about me anymore. This podcast, this platform, I don't want to sit here talking about my story. I tried to not interject when I'm talking to guests about my stuff. It's good that we can have, relatable topics and whatnot. And I understand them because I was in prison myself. But now it's about the guest. And what I realized was the episodes where someone's told their story perform already on the public perform way less than, say, someone that's coming in from Wisconsin that's never shared a story before the world, that has the opportunity to feel comfortable to share their story, their traumatic moments, their prison stuff. And that episode does very, very well. And that's what the world is interested in hearing. And that's when I learned I had something special and I had to run with that.
That's amazing. And we've talked about the prison talk community, and the reality is that most of us have not done very well at monetizing that or turning that into a platform that produces any kind of results other than followers. And I guess maybe your business background or your entrepreneurship background has informed you to proceed in a way that allows you to succeed. But when you first started telling videos, you were getting flack for talking about prison, and now you're getting flack for not having prison people on there. How do you respond to the people that are criticizing you no matter what you do?
I think now it's I used to be obsessive over the comments when I first started, which I think a lot of us are as creators. And what I realize is I always see a similar mindset me before I grew this maturity in some of the guests I have on, that when an episode drops, they're responding to every single hateful comment trying to explain their side of the story. And they don't have to do that. But I was like that too in the beginning, responding to every comment. And maybe that helps boost engagement, whatever. But I got worked up over it. Now, creators like ourselves are getting thousands of comments a day on all the old videos. And, I built thick skin around that. But now it's like, I've built this platform where I can interview whoever I want. Like, I want to have a good conversation. And yes, the prison stuff sells. It's always going to sell. That's why other creators not in the prison world want to bring individuals like ourselves on to their show to help boost their numbers. But I also don't mind having an intellectual conversation and knowing that I built something where, like right now, a week episode for us does 10,000 views on YouTube within 2 to 3 days. To me, that's a win because in January, your first episode that I did with you, it took 2 days to reach 1,000 views. So that just shows the growth right there. And then that's not even audio downloads aside. So when I have people say, like, I'll see comments, they're like, oh, this episode bombed. It's only at 5,000, in 24 hours. That's a win for me. That's a win. How hard is it to stand out on YouTube? You know what that's like. So for me, I don't get upset about that anymore. I do the best I can to do a high quality interview. I put it out there and I know the universe is going to propel that the best way it can. And it's not always going to be about prison. That's why I did the Chevy Chase thing. I want to get into different trauma aspects and do different things.
I really like that. So where do you see the podcast going? Do you see it continuing to just be a series of intellectual conversations? Is there a direction or an audience or a subset you're looking for?
I think it expands into trauma, which is what we're doing now. And I mean, prison and addiction is trauma, but more into like other different types of trauma too. I want people to be able to be comfortable and come on and talk about any traumatic experience in their lives. And that also opens the door to getting certain celebrities on the podcast. But I'm also not going to be a sellout where I need to just get celebrities because I think that's what makes our show so special. You see all the major podcasts in the world, they'll get, say, Beyonce to come on their podcast. And Beyonce will do 6 of the same podcasts the same week and they all come out at the same time. I'm now the person that gets a guest on where the big podcast will take that person after the story breaks, where I'm taking the unknown people because we have people reaching out from all over the country that want to share their story are coming on this. I'm like I don't know, what do you call it? The CNN or whatever, the big podcast platform, because the way I look at it is when I got out of prison and I want to share my story, I hit up all these big podcasts and no one would give me the time of day. So now I want to give all these little guys, people that want to share their story, a platform that's big, just as big as the other ones, to come on, share their story, share what they've been through. And I think that's just what makes it special. And I never want to deviate from that. If an opportunity comes up to have a celebrity on, great, then, come on. But it's not going to be something where we forget about the small guys and it's just celebrities.
Makes sense. So one of the things you've been criticized for is not promoting directly reform or advocacy or saying, oh, you're just doing this to make money. What is your response to that? And how do you feel like you're having an impact on the perception of people after incarceration?
So something I've learned, like with politics and religion, and when you're in a position like me, is to stay neutral. I always try my best to stay neutral on certain topics where I want a platform where I can give an unbiased opinion where someone's coming on to share their side of the story. Now, whether they lie in that or whether they're not honest or whatever happens, I believe that's on them, and that my audience can decipher whether they're telling the truth or not. It's not for me to sit here and say, you're a liar or this and that, because then that breaks that barrier of comfort and honesty and respect. I want the guests to have that opportunity. And there's guests that, there could be questionable that came on the show. And we do research in the sense where we're not going to have Jesse Crossan come on and found out he didn't go to prison, but he's talking about prison the whole time. But it's not for me to say, oh, you didn't fight some guy in prison. How is anyone going to ever verify that? And I know that my show, these stories will create change organically in the system, because there's lawyers watching this podcast. There's I can't tell you how many police officers reach out to me, attorneys, anyone in that field. I think that creates more change than me going on TikTok and saying we need to do this, this, and this, which alienates not only some of my viewers. It's not the same approach in my experience. I think it just needs to be organic and raw, and people will only create change when they themselves want to create change. So when I look at it as if a senator watches one of my clips of a guy saying how he got raped in prison, that's way better for him to see that emotional side of this individual sharing that experience and him wanting to make the change than me going to a senator and saying, we need to stop and we need to change the system now because people are getting raped. It's a different perspective. I think the touching moments when you're on TikTok and you see someone breaking down and crying and you feel their emotions in it, that's what lights a fire in you to change. That inspires you. It's not the people saying, you need to lose weight, you need to do this, you need to do that. You're not putting it down their throats. So it's different. It's a different approach. And it's not always just about the money, because I'll do episodes. We just recorded an episode where nothing's about prison. That's not me trying to highlight and make money off the prison stuff. It's just about sharing. I'm a big mental health advocate, men going to seek mental health therapy and just talking about their emotions and feelings. So I think that's what the platform's about.
That's awesome. So many people get out of prison and then, like I said, want to start their own business or have their own path or have their podcast or go on social media. What would you tell somebody getting out today, or somebody starting over a second act in their life from wherever place? What would you tell them they need to do to succeed?
I think there's a few components. One, you have to be consistent. You have to be dedicated. And you can't give up when the going gets tough. And I look back at the days when I started on Facebook. I posted every day, 3 to 5 times a day. This was like last September, and on YouTube Shorts. And I would not get more than 20 views. And I did that every day. I didn't get discouraged. And I think a lot of people want to jump in and make the quick money or start something, and they get discouraged by that. Or the one comment saying this has no views. If you be consistent with that, you do that every day for 3 to 6 months, I guarantee you're going to see something. Now, granted, you have to put out quality content. You can't put out like a fuzzy video or anything like that. But if you make an attempt, and anyone can do, you got an iPhone. You don't need fancy gear. You're still making videos on your iPhones and you're getting hundreds of thousands of views. Our best videos on TikTok are us sitting with the iPhone telling a story. That's all you need. You need an iPhone. Go get a used iPhone somewhere, or finance it, whatever you got to do. And you just start there and you do that consistently. That's like working out. Everyone that goes in the beginning of January to the gyms and says, I want to lose weight, and then they drop off. Nothing's ever going to change. Just be consistent, and you'll learn along the way where you have to pivot. What's working, what's not working, and you figure it out and you make tweaks to it.
So what do you think the appeal was that you brought to social media when you started sharing your story? Why did people like you?
I think people like me because I'm one of the least likely people you would ever expect to go to prison. I think that the prison market, because I've realized there's a lot more creators coming out there that are telling prison stories that aren't necessarily doing well or getting the views, because the prison market, I guess you could say, might be oversaturated because there's so many creators, and that kind of exploded during COVID. I think I had the unique ability to have the glasses and the red cheeks and to be able to put on a video, I paid for protection in prison or this and that, and people stop at that video and say, "No way, this kid went to prison." So I brought like a different type of realm to it, and also I'm relatable to someone's, grandson or brother or son or whatever. I'm relatable because I could be anyone's, kid or relative that goes through this. And I also think a big part of the appeal is you have a lot of prison YouTubers, and no shame to them, but they're talking about prison stabbings or the blood and the gore and this and that. And a adult or a grandmother or a grandfather are not going to relate to that individual. But if they see a video of me, and these individuals are active on Facebook and YouTube because you are one of the few influencers in this realm that have been able to build a successful Facebook. And that's a big older following on that. And I've been able to do the same thing. And what I found is that they are appreciative of our point of views, but we're telling it in a real and authentic way.
And that's one of the things that I appreciate about you is that so much of prison was about pride, about like not letting your guard down and not letting anybody step on your toes and not letting anybody disrespect you. And you came out without any pride at all. You posted the video about, hey, I paid for protection in prison, and you did all those things, and you set your pride to the side and didn't get caught up in that mentality. Where did that mindset come from?
I just think I've always been like that. I've always been, from a young age, I always knew that there's no such thing as bad press. I did theater in high school. I knew what it took to be the center of attention, center of stage. They used to have me dress up as a woman in some of the plays, and that's what sold. Like what I realized with the club is every bad article that the town or the city wrote about me, that only helped. It helped bring more traction. Like now, if someone makes a video about me or makes a comment that goes viral or anything like that, and really like no one really makes bad videos about me. Like if you search on stuff, there'll be the occasional person, but that only helps. Anytime you have someone talking about you, and it took a while to get through that. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't sitting here with thick skin the whole time. Like I used to obsess over every comment. I remember when I got arrested, seeing my classmates in high school bash me and bring me through the mud and say some crazy stuff. People that I used to be close with, I used to eat with and hang out with that came to my house, say that stuff. That hurt. That draws people over the edge. But I got through all that and I worked through it. And now like I love that shit. Like keep talking about it, say whatever, because it only helps what I'm doing right now.
So do you ever engage with trolls just to like drive the engagement, or are you just done engaging with anybody who has something negative to say?
Sometimes I'll say something like I used to argue with them, which I realize is the worst thing you can do. Like I'll see creators and influencers argue with people. Now I'll just troll them back. Like I'll give them like a heart emoji if I see it, or I'll give it a like, or I'll say something funny back. But I'm not affected by it anymore. And I think that's when like you gain your power back, when you're not affected by something. And we were talking about that in the car earlier with like relationships and stuff. There comes a certain point where you just don't care about something anymore and you get that power back. And I think that's so important. I was able to get my power back with what people thought about me because I was so self-conscious for so long. Now it's okay, you don't like me. And it's easier for me to say that with individuals that I don't get to know. Like it's a lot harder for me if I've been involved with someone. Now I'm saying, okay, you don't like me, that's different. But I'm saying like the average person on the street or someone that makes a comment saying, what he's doing is this or that, it doesn't affect me. I'm not bothered by that, where I used to be bothered by that for so long.
So without arguing with them, if you had one thing to say to all the trolls and all the haters and all the people trying to tear you down right now, what would that be?
I would say maybe, in a non like cocky ego way, try to do it better. Go out and do something. Because at least I'm trying. You're sitting there doing whatever and you're hating on me, go try it. Like I don't hate on other people. I want people to win. Do I agree with what everyone else is doing? Not necessarily. But I'm still rooting. Like when I see your videos or JD's or whoever's videos doing numbers, great. I'm happy for you. I'm not going to say, oh, he's doing this for the views or, this and that. I'm never going to do that because I knew what it took to get to where I'm at. And it's all, you got to be supportive of each other. I'm not going to agree with everything, but I'm still going to be supportive because that's what it's a part of this.
All right. And if you had one message for somebody who's leaving incarceration or leaving that difficult environment, who may be trying to figure out what to do now, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to find something that they could focus on and put their energy on that brings them some peace and that gives them drive and reignites that flame in them, because we all have a flame inside of us. It just takes us sometimes longer than others to figure out what that flame is. And then it also takes a certain amount of strength to not let the flame get extinguished once you find that flame. But focus on that. Figure it out what it is. It could be a person, a relationship. It could be a business. It could be a job. It could be whatever it is. It could be a pet or a project, the gym. Focus on that flame and make sure that thing stays lit no matter what. And that's going to bring you to exactly where you need to go in life.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ian.
You're welcome, Jesse.